Hello everyone, X4 here, and welcome to All Stands in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 8, Jojolion. In this video, I'll be going over every single stand and the other various stand-like powers that appear throughout the part, in order of appearance, explaining their abilities while identifying the stand's user, musical reference, and original universe counterpart if applicable. As Jojolion is a continuation of the alternate universe started in Steel Ball Run, where we saw many reimagined versions of characters from the original story, mainly Part 1 Phantom Blood, although now in Jojolion, we are brought nearly 120 years into the future to 2011, where the story takes place in an alternate Morio, the fictional town based on the author's hometown of Sendai, first seen in JoJo's fourth part Diamond is Unbreakable. So Jojolion is the alternate version of Part 4 as a whole, which brings us back to a beloved and familiar town, but with new mysteries and evil lurking within the city streets. So let's delve into the peculiar and puzzling world of Jojolion. The first supernatural ability we encounter in Jojolion is actually not a stand, but rather the walleyes, which are still one of the great mysteries of this part, with no cut and dry explanation, but lots of clues alluding to their true purpose. The walleyes act as our introduction to this new Morio, which had appeared on the night of the Great Earthquake and Tsunami that had struck shortly before the start of the story, and is based on the real-life Tohoku earthquake which also occurred on March 11th, 2011, just 2 months before Jojolion began its serialization, which makes this part in many ways a catharsis for those impacted by the tragedy and a story meant to inspire hope. So the walleyes are these large protuberances shaped like crashing waves that suddenly rose up from the ground on the day of the earthquake nearing the coast of Morio. So while the walleyes appear similar to the faults formed from tectonic uplift, they are something entirely different that no researcher could explain. Although later on, we learn about the Blessed Lands of Morio, which is the land directly around the walleyes that is imbued with special abilities, which we'll talk more about later. So the implied origin is that the walleyes were willed into existence from the land itself, as it's said multiple times that they look as if they're protecting something, so since they serve no practical importance to the story, we can simply view them as an extension of the Blessed Lands trying to protect itself, and makes this special location visually distinct. The first stand to appear in the part is Soft and Wet, a close-range humanoid-type stand that has the ability to create soap bubbles with a variety of powers. Its main ability is to temporarily plunder both tangible and intangible properties from anything the bubbles pop on. For example, the user is able to remove someone's eyesight, the sound produced from a wall, and even someone's friction. Although as the part continued, this ability would be used less and less on conceptual properties, and almost exclusively changed to plundering physical things by putting them inside of the bubbles. The stand can also create more durable soap bubbles without the plunder ability for the user to interact with physically. For example, to protect from oncoming attacks, to lift them away from danger, grab things from a distance, or even put themselves inside of by creating a larger bubble. Soft and Wet is very unique in the way that the user doesn't fully understand its capabilities, as they suffer from amnesia and don't even know who they are. So as the story progresses, we see glimpses of the stand's further abilities and multiple evolutions, as the user learns more about their true identity. One ability we see rarely used is grafting, as the user was able to put hair inside of a bubble and attach it to another person by popping it on them. And consistently throughout the story, the stand progresses its explosive bubbles, soap bubbles that are able to create a combustion out of nothing. This starts small and appears to be bubbles that are just popping forcefully enough to break through skin or crack eyeglasses, but by the end of the part, they are full-on explosions, strong enough to break and bend steel. So that's a lot of abilities for one stand, but that's because there is a unique secret behind Soft and Wet's origin that we'll talk more about later, as well as its final evolution. So for now, the stand user is our main JoJo, Josuke Higashikata, who is the alternate universe equivalent of Josuke from Part 4, and the stand's name is in reference to the Prince song Soft and Wet. Next up is the most fun stand in all of JoJo, Fun Fun Fun. This stand has the ability to take control over people's bodies so long as the user is able to stand directly above their target, although in order to achieve its full effect, it requires quite a bit of setup and conditions, as the stand on its own possesses no physical strength whatsoever, and can only take control over parts of the body that have been cut open or touched directly by the user, which will be marked with the stand symbol, and again, only while the user is above the target, so it really only works if the user is able to lure someone in and create traps. As we saw during its fight, the user waited for their target in an apartment above another apartment where he had set up tons of hidden traps, like thumbtacks inside of slippers and sewing pins on the back of a towel, and once the user is able to take control over one limb, it becomes much easier to gain full control, as they can use it to cause more damage, and once the stand has marked all 4 limbs, it can take complete control over someone's body and puppeteer them. Although if at any point the user loses track of their target and isn't directly above them, the stand loses control, which makes it pretty easy to counter. The stand user is Sasame Ojiro, and when this stand first appeared in magazine, it had a more humanoid design that resembled a wooden marionette, so maybe the idea was an alternate surface from part 4, although in the final release the design was changed to better express its elevation rule, and the stand's name, Fun Fun Fun, is a reference to the Beach Boys song of the same name. Next up is the first stand we encounter belonging to the Higashikata family, California King Bed, that has the ability to steal memories. When the stand activates, it creates an illusion of its user being injured, baiting someone into aiding her, although when making physical contact with another person, they will instantly recollect a memory, and in a flash, the user's injuries will vanish, and the memory will be extracted from their target in the form of a chess piece, that the user can hold and examine the memory, or even destroy the piece, losing the memory forever. The user declares fairness is rules and rules are power, establishing the rule that the target can't fuss over them or else they will lose more memories. And what this turns out to be in practice is that anytime their target tries to lie or deceive the user and are caught, they will be punished by having another memory extracted. And since fairness is rule, the user openly says that if they step on their victim's shadows, their memories will be restored, turning this fight into a game of tricks. So overall, the stand is pretty harmless to the average person, as it can't select specific memories to take, it's usually just whatever's on the target's mind. Although when used against Josuke, who has very little memories, it's much more powerful. And in the event that the memory of your stand is removed, any damage to that memory will result in damage to the stand itself. The stand user is Daya Higashikata, the youngest daughter of the family who suffers from poor vision, and the stand's name is in reference to the Rihanna song California King Bed. The next stand to appear would show up outside of Morio's iconic Ozon shop and is Crazy Diamond, being drawn by an artist on the street. So I won't give the whole explanation for this stand, as it doesn't actually exist in this world, at least that we know of, and it's just a reference to part 4, but still technically a stand that appeared in JoJolion. Born This Way is a long-range automatic pursuit type stand that takes the form of a rider and motorcycle. The stand can be attached to anyone the user makes contact with and will begin to follow them, attacking without the need for the user's commands or supervision. So like the other stands so far, Born This Way also has a very specific requirement for activation, as most of the time the stand is invisible and can only appear after its target opens something. This could be something obvious like a door, but also counts smaller actions like opening a flip phone or even a pen cap, which then allows the stand to temporarily attack. And besides its pure strength, which is about that of an actual motorcycle, it also has an elemental effect of freezing wind, manifesting heaps of snow and powerful gusts of icy wind wherever it appears, with a freezing effect similar to that of White Album from part 5. The stand user is the Higashikata family maid Kei Nijimura, whose name is in reference to the Nijimura family from part 4, as well as her name fits the yen theme naming scheme, as the Oku in Okuyasu refers to the amount of 100 million, Cho in Keicho is 1 trillion, and K is 10 quadrillion. Also, when the stand first appeared, it was actually named Going Underground in reference to the song by The Jam, and you can still see the GU pins in K's design, but later it would have its name changed to Born This Way in reference to the Lady Gaga song and album, which also depicts a motorcycle. And as we find out a bit later, K is in fact the daughter of Holly Joestar Kira and bears a Joestar birthmark, but she was using the name Nijimura as an alias. Our next stand is Paisley Park, which for a while uses its abilities subconsciously and would occasionally appear behind its user unknowingly, so its abilities change and evolve vastly throughout the part as the user becomes more aware of her stand and its capabilities. So Paisley Park is a long-range transmuting humanoid type stand with a body shape that closely resembles its user and is covered with a map of Morio. The stand can also change its structure at will, lying flat like a shadow, using its body to display shapes and information, or just amalgamating with whatever it's controlling. At first, this ability operated as a GPS of good fortune that helped guide Josuke away from danger, although soon after this, the stand would begin to use its body to interact with the physical world and manipulate electronics, helping the user uncover information online and take control over a moving vehicle. Although once the user became aware of their stand, it develops a whole new ability of object manifestation, where at random, the stand would alert its user on their phone or any screen nearby and give them 2 options with a couple of seconds to choose, and whichever item you choose, used, the stand will manifest and present to you, but the item will always be something that actually exists nearby. This ability was really only seen in a handful of chapters and just kinda strange. But as the part continued, this ability rapidly developed into being able to control any and all forms of technology in ways beyond logic. For example, if the user were to see a photo of a stoplight, the stand would be able to access the video records of that stoplight. This power is kind of explained through the metaphor where there is an infinite number of identical doors, although one door would have unperceivable traces of being opened, and it's Paisley Park's ability to find those traces and progress beyond. So it's almost similar to Moody Blues in the way that it can uncover the truth and go down these rabbit holes to find information. Paisley Park's user is Yasuo Hirose, the alternate universe equivalent of Koichi Hirose, and the stand's musical reference is to the Prince song of the same name. This next stand is not actually a stand, but the suggestion that the character Holly Joestar Kira did have a stand, but we just never saw it. As when Yasuo visits her in the hospital, it's made clear that she can see Yasuo's stand, something only another stand user could do. And we later find out that her two children were natural-born stand users, and she was also aware of them. But when we are introduced to Holly, she is hospitalized with this mysterious condition that had removed parts of her brain. So I would assume she lost the memory of her stand and was no longer able to use it during the events of the part. And Holly is of course the alternate universe equivalent of Holly from part 3, and her illness throughout the part parallels Holly's stand virus. The Blessed Lands of Morio are a phenomenon we are introduced to by Kei, who brings Josuke to the lands and shows him its power by placing a lemon and tangerine in the ground and then removing them to show the fruit have performed an equivalent exchange. And it was this same power that resulted in the creation of Josuke, who was found buried in the ground at the beginning of the part, confirming that he is the fusion of two people. The exact origin of the Blessed Lands are left ambiguous, although we do know its power is the result of Johnny Joestar, who over 100 years ago, after the events of part 7, had brought the Holy Corpse to Morio and used its power to perform an exchange on his wife Rina, who suffered from an uncurable illness. And he did this at the base of the Twin Pine Trees on Morio's coast, the exact place where the Blessed Lands are today and where Josuke would undergo his fusion. So the implication is that through prolonged exposure to the Holy Corpse, or as a result of Johnny's actions, a miracle had been gifted to the land, imbuing it with this ability of equivalent exchange, similar to that of the Holy Corpse. And the other effect of the Blessed Lands is that it has the power to awaken stand abilities, similar to the effect of the Devil's Palm from part 7, as pretty much every character who lives near or hangs out around the walleyes has developed a stand, and in certain cases, bite marks will appear on people's bodies that seem to accelerate their stand's awakening, akin to being pierced by the stand arrow. Let's shake it down to Shakedown Road to find our next stand ability, Le Feuille, also known as Autumn Leaves. This stand is one that belongs to nature with no human user, similar to the Sugar Mountain Spring from part 7, and all of the leaves scattered along the road are the stand, which activate when a person or object are directly on top of the leaves, and will move them in strange ways. For example, Josuke transported nearly 5 meters across the street, knocked into a fish tank, and returned back to where he started unaware he had even moved. It all happened in an instant. So due to this phenomenon, some residents of Morio began to understand how the leaves work and established an unspoken rule for the street. So now you have these people who hang out around there, looking to use its ability to their advantage and extort those unaware of their movements, earning its name Shakedown Road, as Josuke was shaken down for breaking the fish tank. And the more time we spend here, the more we see how people use this ability, like performing inconspicuous drug deals and advanced movement to chase people down. Later into this arc, we do see the stand has a physical form, which is a colony type stand made up of these small disc-like creatures with the number 11 on them, hiding under the leaves. This arc brings back multiple ideas from part 4, like a villain who extorts someone for cash and preys on their guilt, calling back to the lock, and the concept of a natural phenomenon that exists within the city and is somewhat of a myth, similar to the Ghost Alley, which are both located on the same street as the Ozon shop. But what's most interesting about the Autumn Leaves are their connection to Johnny Joestar, as Shakedown Road is the place where Johnny had died long in the past, and in his last breath touched the leaves on the ground, implied to have imbued them with the power of his rotation, which created a new stand, that then crushed his head with a boulder. The spin could explain the stand's ability of bizarre movements, and also Johnny had died on the night of November 11, the same number seen on the stand. The stand's name is in reference to the jazz standard Autumn Leaves. Next up is Nut King Call, a close-range humanoid type stand that has the ability to place nuts and bolts on their targets, allowing the user to unscrew and connect different parts of the body by removing and placing bolts. It's kinda refreshing to have a simpler stand appear, as that's pretty much all it does, but the user can get creative with this power, disassembling people or even themselves, screwing someone's hand to their face, or even screwing two people together. Hell, you could screw a whole bunch of people with this stand. So in practice, it's very similar ability to Bruno's zippers from part 5, just through a different mechanism. Nut King Call's user is Jojo Higashikata, and the stand's name is a reference and play on words to the musician Nat King Cole. Next up is Tusk Act 4 that appears in Johnny's flashback and functions the same as it did in Steel Ball Run, a perfected golden spin that can only be used when riding a horse. Although in this flashback we see Johnny combine this power with that of the Holy Corpse to create something new, as the first time he tries to get rid of his wife's illness by simply placing Rinna on top of the Holy Corpse, which as we know from Love Train will take something bad and transfer it to someone else across the world at random, although unexpectedly the illness is passed to his son George. This allows Johnny firsthand to see the consequences of his actions and what he was willing to do to someone else. So he vows not to use the Holy Corpse anymore and takes George on his horse to activate Act 4 and places George on the Holy Corpse while shooting him with a nail bullet, essentially intercepting the illness as it's being removed and directing it back on himself, performing a true equivalent exchange and actually having to pay a price for the corpse's power, which in the end is his life and a perfect conclusion to Johnny's character arc. It's also theorized that as a result of Johnny's sacrifice, he was cleansed from his sins and became a saint whose corpse would have similar powers to the Holy Corpse, as it's heavily implied that Johnny was buried at the base of the twin pine trees, as following his death, the family would create a shrine in his memory, and actually his corpse is what granted the miracle of the Blessed Lands, which would also explain the walleyes being a new form of the Devil's Palm for a new saint. And this also ties into Josuke, who is the Blessed JoJo. That's what the name Jojolion means. He's a messiah created by the Blessed Lands to free the Higashikata family from calamity, which was the original will of Johnny. So Tusk Act 4, and I guess also technically the Blessed Lands, belong to Johnny Joestar, and Tusk's name is in reference to the Fleetwood Mac song of the same name. Paper Moon King is the stand which takes the form of origami that replicates the physical properties of whatever the user creates. For example, an origami frog will be able to hop around like a real frog, or an origami cicada will be able to fly and a car can drive forward. But the stand isn't just one origami or bound to a single piece of paper. The user can make multiple creations out of whatever they have available. And alongside this is the stand's main ability of deception, which is able to mentally alter the perception of anyone that comes in contact with the origami. The first use of this ability we saw was rendering multiple targets unable to recognize faces, seeing the same face on every person. This was more like a form of torture than an actual attack, as it also removed one's ability to discern bodies, voices, and even written text. Later on, we see the ability expanded upon with more practical uses that allowed the user to alter perceptions in more specific ways to trick people and endanger them without them even knowing they're under the stand's effect. For example, making it so every bus in the city you will now perceive as a person, where if the enemy is looking for the stand, now every leaf on the ground appears as Paper Moon King. So very powerful ability, especially if the enemy isn't aware of it. And nearing the end of the part, it's used to completely upend a major power struggle and come out the victor despite having no physical strength. The stand user is Tsurugi Higashikata, the firstborn of the new generation, and the stand's name is in reference to the song It's Only a Paper Moon by Ella Fitzgerald. Shortly following the Paper Moon Deception arc, we are properly introduced to the Higashikata family curse, also known as the Rock Disease, a supernatural illness that affects the firstborn of each new Higashikata generation. Its symptoms start with confusion and loss of memories, followed by the skin hardening like stone that eventually kill its user. This disease is a complete medical anomaly that no doctor the world over could make sense of or cure, and has been affecting their family for hundreds, if not thousands of years with no known origin. Rinna Higashikata was the first survivor of this disease thanks to Johnny's sacrifice, and started their family tradition of using the Blessed Lands to exchange it, where an older family member would sacrifice themselves to save the child, and these exchanges would be performed at the base of Johnny's shrine. Later on in the part, we encounter a stand which manifests in the form of a curse, created by a sin in the past with no user, but persists throughout time. So it's likely that the Rock Disease is a similar manifestation, and is actually a curse type stand belonging to the Higashikata bloodline. K-Nothing is a long-range stand made up of individual jigsaw puzzle pieces with the ability to track down a particular person or object based on scent. The stand will register a scent by making contact and replicating its shape, automatically triggering the stand to move towards the origin of the scent. The stand, while having little physical strength, can also be used as an extension of the user's body, and because it's able to deconstruct itself, it can find its way into hard-to-reach places. The stand can also recreate original shapes when touching an object that is broken or a part of something larger. For example, by touching a fruit, the stand could reveal the tree branch in which it came from. K-Nothing's user is Norisuke Higashikata IV, the head of the family, as well as the great-grandson to Norisuke I, who raced in the Steel Ball Run. The stand's name is in reference to the Metallica song K-Nothing, and as you may have noticed, all of the stands belonging to the Higashikata family have kin in their name, which is a trend that will continue throughout the part. I Am a Rock is a stand with the ability to make its target the center of a gravitational force upon making physical contact, that will gradually accelerate over time, eventually resulting in their enemy being crushed by any objects that are being pulled inwards towards the center of gravity, which converge at the peak of their acceleration, causing a forceful impact. So the user must have two targets in mind, who they want to attack and what they want to attack with, as the objects being pulled towards each other must all be the same, or at least made of the same material. For example, flower pots, chestnut burrs, and bottled chemicals. So due to this stand's strength, it has a limited range of 5 to 10 meters, so the target can escape its gravity if they can create some distance from the user. Although due to their special rock-like anatomy, it can be difficult to pinpoint them. The stand also has a humanoid manifestation that can be used to attack physically, with strength relatively equal to that of the user. The stand user is Yotsuyu Yagiyama, the architect who designed the Higashikata home, and the stand's name is in reference to the Simon & Garfunkel song, I Am a Rock. So Yotsuyu is our introduction to the true antagonist of Jojolion, the rock humans, which are creatures that have existed since the creation of life about 4 billion years ago, and were created through the process of life cells that bonded to the element silicone, which existed alongside carbon-based organisms as if they were hiding next to them. This gave the creation of life two paths: carbon-based life, which would become plants, animals, and humans, or silicone-based life, that would become rock organisms and rock humans. The reason for this was evolution's survival instincts creating a fallback species, to ensure that if one form of life failed, life itself wouldn't come to a dead end, and could fall back on the second path. And it just so happened to work out that carbon-based life was the most suitable for survival and heavily outnumbered silicone life. But nature still continues to create rock organisms, who often choose to hide within society, as by nature they are parasitical creatures. And throughout the part we learn tons of specific details about them, such as their anatomy, life cycles, likes, dislikes, mating habits, social behaviors, and more. The main difference between species lies in their anatomy, as being silicone-based creatures, they can harden their bodies like stone and are able to sustain under long periods of hibernation, and also apparently produce plastic wrap from their eyeballs, which was a technique used by Yotsuyu. Otherwise, the rock humans are pretty much indistinguishable from regular humans. Although another difference lies in their psychology, as nearly all rock humans lack empathy and have extreme sociopathic tendencies. As it's stated, rock humans on rare occasions will fall in love with humans, but 97.5% of the relationships will end with the rock human killing their partner. The rock humans act as a parallel to the themes presented by Kira Yoshikage in part 4, but on a larger scale, being this evil lurking within a quiet town and assimilating with society, masking their true identity. Although motivation-wise, the rock humans are far more similar to the Pillar Men from part 2, as they are trying to rise above humans and become the dominant species, believing they are genetically superior life forms and that the earth belongs to them, because they are more in tune with nature, as it's said that 95% of rock humans are stand users. And alongside the rock humans, there are also rock organisms, which often harness stand-like powers, and take many forms, such as animals, insects, and even ordinary objects. The first of which we encounter is the strange rock dog that's been roaming the Higashikata estate, and is able to phase through walls and turn his body to stone. But he's pretty chill, so he becomes the family dog, beloved by all, and is named Iwasuke. So for all future rock organisms, just know their powers aren't really stands, but still supernatural due to their DNA. Up next is Speed Cane, a close-range humanoid-type stand with the ability to create and store heat to an exceedingly small point that can reach upwards of 600 degrees Fahrenheit. The stand's effective range is about 10 centimeters, so the user can only apply his heat to things he's pretty much in direct contact with, although once the heat is stored, it can leave the user's range while still holding its effect. This ability might seem a bit underwhelming, as it is limited and not very flashy, but still extremely lethal, as it can be used to heat a person's blood vessels near instantly and set traps as the heat can be planted on objects that spread rapidly when touched, as the user can control the acceleration of temperature so it could be instant or have a delayed effect, allowing the stand to still attack its targets well outside of its effective range. It's stated early on that Speed Cane still has further hidden abilities, although unfortunately we never saw anything more to this stand outside of a generic stand barrage, showcasing some physical strength. The stand user is the eldest son, Jobin Higashikata, and the stand's name is in reference to the Deep Purple song of the same name off of the album Deep Purple in Rock, so even more rock references from Araki. The Rokakaka Fruit is another rock-based phenomenon within JoJolion, which contains the ability of self-equivalent exchange, as whoever eats the fruit will undergo some sort of physical rejuvenation but in exchange for another part of their body, and it's completely random what is exchanged, creating some lethal risk to using the fruit. One example we see is an old man missing a leg who eats a fruit and almost immediately grows a new one with a general increase to vitality, while his eyes turn to stone, or a baseball pitcher who had suffered a shoulder injury uses the fruit to heal himself, and in exchange his teeth and jaw crumble away. The fruit are said to be extremely rare and originate from Papua New Guinea, but are illegally smuggled into Japan and sold by the rock humans at an incredibly high price. Their power could be seen as another blessing from the earth, but is most likely just a silicone-based plant more compatible with the rock organisms. As we saw, Iwasuke enjoys eating the fruit with no major side effects, and because of its healing powers, it becomes the main motivation for most of the characters. Next up is Doobie Wah, a long-range automatic pursuing type stand that takes the form of a small tornado with its humanoid form dwelling within the vortex, that uses the blades on its hands to attack its targets. This stand will attach itself to whoever the user comes in contact with or by touching their stand, and will manifest itself in response to the target's breathing, feeding off of their exhalation, so the more air the target expels, the larger and faster the stand will become. Doobie Wah is honestly one of the most powerful pursuing stands in the series, as its activation is unavoidable and can only be stopped by holding your breath, but will reappear as soon as you start to breathe again. The stand moves slightly slower than its target, so it can be outran, although if you're running, you'll increase your breathing, making the stand larger. And there are ways to trick the stand, like moving your breath away from your body, but it can really only be defeated by attacking the user. Doobie Wah's user is the Rock Human Ice Show, and its name is in reference to the Peter Frampton song of the same name, and might be a callback to the Pillar Man Wamu from Part 2, who has a similar sounding name and ability. Love Deluxe is a stand you might immediately recognize as the alternate version of Love Deluxe from Part 4, although this version of the stand cannot control the user's hair, rather only other people's hair, and is no longer a bound stand, now having a humanoid form. And we mostly see this ability used outside of combat and through the user's schemes, as she is a grade A con artist, convincing men she can cure baldness, scamming restaurants for free food, and even swiping credit cards and PIN numbers, as the stand's ability is to make a person's hair grow out of anywhere that person has touched within a range of 80 meters. So she can make people's hair grow and cure baldness, although it just falls out when she's out of range and already gone with their money. One of the only times we see this stand used for combat, the user had made a person's hair grow as a long string and set it on fire, instantly igniting all of the hair, which is a reference to the original user, Yukako, from Part 4. The stand user is Carrera Sakunami, and the stand's name is in reference to the Sade album, Love Deluxe. And the extra love in the stand's name is a play on words in Japanese, as love would mean something closer to lovey-dovey, which gets a bit lost in translation, so its new name is more like Lovey-Dovey Deluxe, which reflects Carrera's very quirky way of speaking. Now enters the Twins, two identical rock humans that possess the stand's shot key number 1 and 2. Number 1 belongs to the older brother that has the very simple ability which allows him to transfer any object he touches with his left hand onto his right hand. This ability functions by forming his right hand into a rock stump that will reproduce the object he touches while leaving the original to crumble away. And visually is a super interesting ability, seeing the user turn his hand into a handcuff and grabbing someone else's hand, reproducing it onto that handcuff as he breaks it off from his body. The user can also to some extent manipulate the transferred material, such as warping solid metal. The younger brother's ability, shot key number 2, is a stand made out of a semi-humanoid poisonous gas cloud that resides inside a ball with a zipper to contain it, as even its own user isn't immune to the poison, and will attack by kicking the ball towards their target and automatically open when in range, which is about 20 centimeters. And the brothers can even use their stands together and transfer the deadly poison further than its effective range. The stand users are the Aphex Twins, and their names and stands are in reference to the song Shocky 7th Path by Aphex Twin. We've now reached the mid-boss of the part, who possesses the stand Vitamin C, which manifests as a ghost-like stand with dozens of arms that spread outwards from the main body. Its ability is to lay out a trap around its user, using the stand's many hands to attach its fingerprints all over the walls and objects within a designated area. For example, the Higashikata home's ground floor. The user can also use their own hands to set these traps, and these prints are subtle enough to not be immediately noticed until you've already been affected by the stand. Upon making contact with the stand's fingerprints, the target's bodies will quickly soften into a frail elastic putty, stripping away all of their strength and the use of their stands, and over time the effects will only progress, eventually turning its victims into puddles of flesh. The user can also accelerate its progression when directing the stand towards a single target. So the area of effect component, along with its subtle activation, is what makes this stand extremely deadly, as the user was able to enter a home full of 6 stand users and within a matter of minutes incapacitates all of them with ease. And the only counter to its ability is to escape its barrier, which is usually impossible while under its effects, although Josuke is able to move a member of the family outside of the home with his bubbles to instantly negate the stand's effect. Vitamin C's user is the rock human and boss of the Rokakaka trade, Damo Tamaki, and the stand's name is in reference to the song of the same name by Can. During the fight against Vitamin C, we alternate between a flashback before the events of the part, which reveal the truth behind Josuke's identity and stand, which introduces us to a familiar favorite, Killer Queen. So alternate world Killer Queen appears nearly identical to the original with a slightly altered ability, as its primary bomb is now replaced with bubbles that will explode upon contact and cause damage to the physical world, unlike the original, as this universe's user does not have a desire to kill or get away with it. It also still retains sheer heart attack, although it is now more limited and acts like a secondary ability and not a whole other stand, as the user can send out barrages of sheer heart attacks similar to a stand rush and control them more intently, like shrinking them down to clear a blood clot with a micro explosion. Killer Queen's user is none other than Kira Yoshikage, who is the alternate Kira from part 4, having similar quirks like a love for hands and collecting fingernails, but importantly is not a killer, as he is also the alternate Jotaro. As part 8, Kira is the son of Holly Joestar, whose children both share qualities of the original universe Jotaro. Her daughter Kei takes on more design influences, while her son Kira carries more of Jotaro's personality as well as a love for the sea, as they both chose a marine-based profession, as Kira was a ship doctor. Kira is also Josuke's connection to the Joestar bloodline, as it's confirmed through this flashback he is half Kira, and his stand being half Killer Queen. That now brings us to the other half of Josuke and the original Soft and Wet. So before Josuke obtained his stand, it actually belonged to someone else, which shared its name and design, but with a slightly different ability of absorption, which is similar to plunder but limited to physical material, being able to extract specific material by placing it in a bubble, as we see the stand remove pepper from a bowl of ramen, and was able to graft branches together by quickly exchanging the 2 branches' material to form a bond. Soft and Wet's original user was Josefumi Kujo, who shared design elements with the original universe Josuke, but is not a part of the Joestar bloodline. Despite the character originally being depicted with the birthmark, this would later be removed in reprints of the manga. And the stand's name is still in reference to the Prince song, Soft and Wet. The next ability to appear is the evolved version of the Rokakaka Fruit, as during this Vitamin C flashback we see Josefumi steal a branch of the fruit's tree and grafts it to another tree located on the Blessed Lands. The intention was to grow a Rokakaka that could save Kira's mom Holly from her declining mental state, as through spying on the rock humans, Kira and Josefumi became aware of its power of exchange, although they were unaware of the power already within the Blessed Lands, so the fruit that bore from their graft became imbued with a new equivalent exchange, which unlike the original fruit could exchange cells with another person instead of oneself. This ability is what gave creation to Josuke, as Josefumi had fed the fruit to a dying Kira thinking it would save him, although instead took the healthy cells from Josefume's body and exchanged them with Kira's dying cells, and this along with the aftershock that buried the 2 underground caused their bodies to fuse together, creating Josuke and his 4 balls. This also explains why Josuke kept Soft and Wet and not Killer Queen, as his body is mostly Josefumi, as in the beginning of the part, Kira's body was found just in a degenerative state, as whatever was still alive from his dying body had fused into Josuke. So those who later become aware of this new fruit interpret its power as a boon of immortality, making obtaining it the main power struggle for the rest of the part, and later on when we see it grafted to a cactus, it takes on a new appearance but still has the same ability. Next up is Walking Heart, a close-range humanoid type stand with the ability to extend the heel of its user's shoes into a sharp point, allowing the user to attack with deadly kicks and barrages of spiked heels, as well as walk up walls Dio style by digging her heels into the wall, which has enough power to easily pierce through brick and stone. The stand only appears briefly and is unknown if the user can apply this ability to more than just her heels, but even as it stands, I still love this ability as it's refreshing to see just a purely offensive stand that doesn't require any dialogue to explain its power and has a great design. Walking Heart's user is the eldest daughter, Hato Higashikata, and it's unclear if this stand is a musical reference as there is no obvious reference, so the name could simply be a pun that combines her ability with the Kin theme naming scheme and then tacked heart onto the end as this was an emotional moment for Hato, which gives you Walk, Kin, Heart. The Milagro Man marks the halfway point of the part and acts as an interlude where we encounter a curse-like stand that manifests in the form of money that will attach itself to a person who comes in contact with the cursed money and ends up destroying it in some way, which is also how the curse is passed from one person to another. The effects of this curse will result in a rapid accumulation of money, where no matter how you try to spend it or get rid of it, it will always return to you with interest, to the point where it becomes so much of a burden, you're literally being attacked by money and will soon realize it's a curse and not a blessing. This stand originates from the sins committed by an arms dealer long in the past, who made his fortune by fueling the war economy, although when faced with lawsuits, killed himself and his family in a fire, leaving behind a $1 bill, which became Milagro Man, showing that the stand can change forms depending on where it is in the world, starting as a US dollar. And the stand's name is in reference to Miracle Man, as Milagro means miracle in Spanish and could be named after the Ozzy Osbourne or Elvis Costello song. Next up is the stand Space Trucking, which has the ability to store objects within playing cards and release them by lifting the cards. The stand can store things much larger than the cards themselves, like an entire chair and even other people who are kept safe inside. The stand can also be used offensively to hold down a target by trapping their limbs under the cards, and generally anything the cards fall on they can absorb. The stand manifests in two forms, a suit-themed humanoid stand and the playing cards themselves, which have the user's motif on them. And assuming it's a standard deck of playing cards, it should be able to hold around 50 objects at a time. The stand user is the mother of the Higashikata family, Kato, who first showed this ability in chapter 55, although its full name and appearance wouldn't be revealed until chapter 107, and the stand's name is in reference to the song Space Truckin' by Deep Purple. Blue Hawaii is a long-range automatic pursuit type stand that possesses those that come in contact with the user or just a part of the user, like their tooth, turning them into a zombified state that will then pursue a target ferociously. The user can also make those infected return to him and control them like a puppet when at close range. So the stand will use innocent bystanders as its minions, transferring the ability between people to chase down their target, as it can only infect one person at a time, using the blood of whoever is currently infected as a method to transfer the stand. So the stand will often deliberately injure the host to infect others. And what's most interesting about this stand is that the entire arc itself is an alternate version of Highway Star from Part 4, both sharing the basic structure of the main JoJo running away from a pursuing stand while trying to avoid contact, as they need to use the resources around the city to stay ahead of the stand, like Josuke stealing a motorcycle and Josuke a bicycle, and the enemy stand user are both unable to move because of their physical condition, and the main JoJos have to reach out to a Hirose to help find the stand user. Blue Hawaii's user is the rock human Dolomite, and the stand's name is in reference to the song of the same name performed by Elvis Presley, and in Part 7, the name of the boat Valentine was on was also Blue Hawaii.
Yeah.
Doggy Style is an integrated type stand that allows its user to peel their own skin like an apple, similar to Stone Free's ability to unravel from Part 6. Although Doggy Style's material is a bit larger and looks more like paper, the user can manipulate their peeled skin in various ways, such as stretching it over long distances to grab things, peeling two different points at the same time like his hand and elbow to transform his arm into a makeshift crossbow, and can even peel his entire body if necessary to avoid damage that would otherwise destroy their body. And although this is an integrated type stand, it does have a physical form that will appear behind its user when it's active, but doesn't actually do anything. The stand user is the plant appraiser Mamazuku Rai, and the stand's name is in reference to the Snoop Dogg album Doggy Style. And the location where the stand is introduced is a reference to the stand's Superfly from Part 4, where we saw its user had lived inside an electrical pylon, and we see that Mamazuku lives on a ski lift with the different poles acting as different rooms. This next stand, Brainstorm, introduces us to the new villain group, the Rock Human Doctors. Brainstorm is a long-range, non-humanoid colony-type stand that manifests in the form of small burr puzzle-shaped objects with spikes on the end. The pieces are sent out by the user and track down their targets, infecting anyone they come in contact with by melting through flesh and burrowing into the bloodstream while multiplying, quickly resulting in death if infected. The user can also use this ability to melt through the ground and burrow underneath. Brainstorm's user is the Rock Human Urban Gorilla, whose name and stand are in reference to the Hawkwind songs of the same name, as well as the stand is a metaphor for the will of these new rock humans, as the arc begins with him underground stalking his prey, and through his attack feeds off of the humans and is able to rise above them, putting the humans below the rock humans, symbolic of the hierarchy of life they wish to achieve. And fighting alongside Urban Gorilla is the rock animal DoremifasolatiDo, which takes the form of a caterpillar-like tank creature with a dog face who's sticking his tongue out that can move extremely fast underground by using caterpillar propulsion to break down and just melt through any material in front of the animal and shoot it behind itself with its tracks to propel itself forward, which can also be used to avoid attacks. The animal has a hollowed out torso that Urban Gorilla uses to ride along in and take cover. Do-Re-Mi's name is in reference to the Hawkwind album and the general music term for learning scales, Do-Re-Mi-Fa-Sol-La-Ti-Do. After this encounter with Do-Re-Mi, we get a Yasuo flashback as the rock animal reminds her of something she encountered in the past, which was another rock organism that took the form of an antique hair clip. The hair clip, when worn, will cause the user's skin to become increasingly dry and flaky, although the creature can also transform into a more stand-like shape and dig into the owner's scalp, generating a massive amount of skin flakes that can be used to create a projection of the owner's fears to emotionally torture its target. This rock creature can easily be destroyed and has no name, only being referred to as the hair clip, which is said to be a relic of the Chinese Qing dynasty. Our next stand is Ozon Baby, which is first seen as a Lego replica of the White House that the user carries around with him, and is later given to Jobin to be buried in the orchard where the stand would initiate its attack. Although during its fight, we see the stand has another form that is more stand-like, so I would guess that the Lego White House is a sub-stand that is used to activate the stand's ability, which is to slowly increase the air pressure of all sealed-off spaces within a 100-meter radius. So while under this effect, any attempt to go outside the room you're in, or just to the outside world, will result in rapid depressurization sickness, which on its own could be lethal, but is still lethal even if you don't try to go outside, as the pressure increasing will eventually cause your body to cave in on itself. So for such a powerful ability, I see this Lego replica as its limitation, forcing the user to actually go to where he wants to affect, exposing himself to danger, or he could have someone else do it, but then he wouldn't be able to monitor the situation. Ozon Baby's user is the rock human Poor Tom, whose name and stand are in reference to the songs off of the Led Zeppelin album, Coda. Dr. Wu is an integrated type stand that allows its user to break their body down into small rock fragments and reform at will, although the user does not have complete control to move these fragments and has to rely on wind currents to travel while fragmented. The stand can also enter people's bodies to achieve various results. The first is that the user, being a doctor, keeps his stand a secret from the hospital staff and uses it to perform complex operations with a 100% success rate, although this ability can also be used to take full control over another person or simply hide inside them as an undetectable passenger, as this was used to gain information from the Higashikata family. Dr. Wu's user is the rock human Wu Tomaki, who never fails, and the stand's name is in reference to the Steely Dan song of the same name, Dr. Wu. Awaken 3 Leaves is the last stand belonging to the Higashikata family and is a close-range humanoid-type stand enshrouded with a massive cloak covered in arrows that represent its ability, which is able to create a vector space. By summoning arrows from the user's hands, and each arrow placed will begin to move energy in the direction they are pointed. Although when placing 3 arrows, the stand will then create a vector space, releasing a burst of energy towards their combined direction. So in the example shown, the arrows on the left and the right emit energy outwards between them, and the third arrow the user places is pointed upwards, which she uses to pull herself into the air and amplify her kick while putting Dr. Wu directly in the path of the vector, sending him flying. So the user has to have some spatial awareness and place their arrows strategically to get the vector where they want it, but it can also be used in simpler ways like stacking all of the arrows along the same axis, directing all of its energy in one direction, like accelerating an elevator upwards. Awaken 3 Leaves user is Mitsuba Higashikata, Jobin's wife, who appeared when we first met the family, although is mostly absent from the first half, and like Hato, her stand has no known musical reference but seems to reference her own name, Mitsuba, which means 3 leaves, referring to the suit of clubs, as some of the family members represent a suit. Daya is diamond, Tsurugi is spade, Hato is heart, and Mitsuba is 3 leaves, like a clover, and the mother, Kato, is card, as her stand contains all of the suits representing her family. And that brings us to the ultimate villain of JoJolion, Wonder of You, which is an extremely long-range, semi-sentient humanoid-type stand that takes the form of the hospital's head doctor, Akefu Satoru, an identity stolen by the user hiding its true appearance behind a human face. Although to those that come to understand the truth behind the head doctor, this facade will fade away, revealing the stand. Through Wonder of You, the user is able to see, speak, and act freely, essentially using it as a second body, allowing him to be multiple places at once. The stand also has a more automated mode that allows it to appear anywhere within Morio and attack simply through its presence, moving around the city instantly, making it appear as if there are multiple of the stand. Although in some cases there are, as when at the hospital in the form of the head doctor, it is within a physical body that can somewhat be manipulated, potentially the body of Akefu, as there are moments where it's sometimes on standby, deactivated, waiting for the user to take control, as well as when taking damage will bleed and attempt to run away from danger, when it should be able to simply dematerialize. So the physical body may be necessary to pull off its ruse of head doctor, otherwise when activating its ability, the stand will appear for just a moment around its targets to show that they are trapped within its flow. So it's difficult to try and explain in a definite way how this stand works, as the point of it is to be illogical and contradicting, taking major influences from surrealist imagery and ideologies, specifically the various works of René Magritte. So besides the stand's elusive form, its main ability is the manipulation over the flow of calamity, a force in the alternate universe as prevalent as time and gravity, a law of nature that represents misfortune, being the opposite of the positive flow seen in Part 7, which was controlled by Love Train, protecting its user within a positive flow of fortune, and the energy it redirected was calamity, misfortune that was sent to someone across the world at random for no logical reason, and Wonder of You is the embodiment of misfortune, allowing its user and the stand to wear calamity energy like an aura that surrounds their body, directing misfortune towards anyone who attempts to get close or is even within its presence. Its ability also amplifies the damage of this misfortune, such as knocking into a cart has enough power to break your legs, falling down a slope will tear off limbs, or rain falling from the sky hits like bullets. Wonder of You's user is the rock human Toru, although this stand will persist even after its user has died, as calamity will always exist in nature, and Wonder of You only allowed Toru to use it for his own personal gain. Wonder of You's name is in reference to the Elvis Presley song of the same name, and I believe is the first time in JoJo a stand user has acknowledged their musical reference or at least been a fan of the song, as we saw Toru listening to Wonder of You while controlling it. Throughout the Wonder of You arc, Araki made the baffling decision to stall out this fight by giving the head doctor multiple rock insects that he would use to try and stop Josuke, the first of which being Dedudududadadada, a centipede-like creature that takes the form of a sushi mat and is able to transform into different objects such as a wrecking ball crane and flails the insect's stinger at the target and will inject them with asbestos that will spew out of the target's body if they try to extend their joints, which can suffocate their prey. Dedudududadada's name is in reference to the song by the Police of the same name. The next insect is Obladi, Oblada, life goes on, and is a parasitic leech that latches onto its prey and will sap their blood and fluids, which makes the insect grow stronger, causing it to multiply, which can quickly overwhelm its prey, and attempting to remove the leech will only cause more to grow in response. But because of the rock-based DNA, it can easily be removed when soaked in water. Obladi, Oblada is in reference to the song of the same name by the Beatles. Go Beyond is the final evolution and true ability of Josuke's Soft and Wet. Its power is awakened subtly throughout the part and was first foreshadowed during the urban gorilla fight, where Mamazuku had noticed that Josuke's soap bubbles are actually a line spinning at an incredibly high speed, making them appear as solid bubbles. And in the final fight against Wonder of You, Josuke would come to understand the truth of this ability and himself, as Josuke is not Josefumi Kujo, who had the ability of absorption, nor Kira Yoshikage, who had exploding bubbles. Josuke Josuke is his own soul and a miracle that was given creation through the Blessed Lands that by all logic should not exist. And it's through accepting himself and letting go of his past identities that allows him to awaken Go Beyond, which like himself is a miracle that exists outside the flow of logic and therefore transcends it, going beyond calamity, much like how Tusk Act 4 was able to enter Love Train's Gap, a space that bypassed the laws of nature. So the mechanism behind Go Beyond that gives it its power is the infinite spin, as they aren't actually bubbles but rather pure spin energy. As the spinning line became so impossibly thin it reached the point of zero, and this power can only come from Josuke's birthmark, symbolizing that it is Johnny's will and his infinite spin that was imbued into Josuke during his fusion. So besides the power to transcend other abilities, the physical form of Go Beyond acts similar to the stand Cream from part 3, just completely erasing anything it comes in contact with, as it's a literal ball of nothingness, but the stand can interact with Paisley Park to direct its energy. Go Beyond's user is Josuke Higashikata, and its name refers to its transcendent nature and Josuke's character development, becoming JoJo Jesus. The Radio Gaga incident is the epilogue of JoJolion, which takes us back to the year 1941, where we follow the story of an elderly Lucy Steele from part 7, who would encounter the rock animal Radio Gaga, which takes the form of a guardrail with a subtle face on it with the bolts appearing as eyes and the layering of the sheet metal opening up like a mouth to suck people inside of. This creature will lure in its targets by mimicking the sound and voices of its previous victims, and can influence those who get close enough to murmur the words Gaga over and over again while taking off their clothes, preparing them to be eaten. It can also reanimate a previous victim, sending them back out in a mutilated state that can be controlled and try and pull in further prey from a distance. This rock creature's name is in reference to the song Radio Gaga by Queen. And that brings us to the final stand in Jojolion, Hermit Purple, which like its original universe equivalent manifests in the form of purple thorns, although now has a humanoid head that will appear behind its user. Its ability is still electronic manipulation, as we saw the user was able to pull in electrical items and take control of their car from a distance using the thorns to start the engine and slam it into the Radio Gaga guardrail, although the full extent of its stand abilities are unknown. The stand's user is the alternate universe Joseph Joestar, also known as Fumikun, which comes from his Japanese name, Josefu, which was written on his Geta sandal he left behind during the fight, that would later be found by Josefume's grandfather, who liked the name so much he would give it to his grandson, showing that Josefume and Kira were always destined to meet. Hermit Purple's name is in reference to the Hermit Tarot card, and the pattern on its head would later resemble Joseph's grandson, Jodio. And that, my friends, is every single stand in Jojolion, which after all of the natural phenomenon and rock organisms had by far the most segments out of any all stands, coming in at 43 individual topics. But if you'd like to hear me talk more about Jojolion, you can check out my 2-part retrospective series that goes in depth on nearly every aspect of its story, characters, and stands. So be sure to like the video if you made it to the end, subscribe for more JoJo content, and thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you again real soon. Peace!